Good afternoon, everyone. This is Derek Snyder with the National Weather Service office in Paducah. We'll get going with our Facebook Live briefing here in a couple minutes. I'll just let more people join the video before we get going. I just want to confirm, does my audio sound okay to everyone? If a couple people can leave a message, that'd be good. I just want to make sure I'm sounding clear to everyone. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks for the confirmation. All right, everyone. It is 4 o'clock, I see here. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I wish I had better news to share, as always, when we have winter weather in the forecast. So I'm going to jump in and show you the latest forecast that we've come up with and our latest headlines that we've issued. So I'll just cut right to the chase here. Here's a map of what we've issued across our area. This all begins tonight at midnight Wednesday. We have an ice storm warning in effect for northwest or northeast Arkansas, northwest Tennessee, northwest Tennessee, the Missouri Boot Heel back towards Poplar Bluff, Ripley County, and then extending into southeast Missouri, extreme southern Illinois, Cairo, over to Metropolis, and then Pope and Hardin counties in Illinois, and then much of western Kentucky. That includes Paducah, that includes Fulton, Union City in Tennessee, Murray, over to Princeton, Trigg County, and Katie's area, Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, over to Madisonville, Greenville, and then as far north into Webster and McLean counties. This is where we're expecting the greatest ice accumulations, and I'll have an ice map here in a minute, but this is where we're expecting generally a quarter of an inch up to possibly as much as a third of an inch with locally higher amounts. And so this is where we're expecting the greatest impacts for possibly accumulation on trees and power lines that could cause tree damage and some scattered power outages. And as well, in addition to treacherous driving conditions with icy roads and bridges and whatnot. And then going further north, that includes Cape Girardeau, Perryville, Missouri, Carbondale, Marion, Illinois, up to Mount Vernon, over to Evansville, Henderson, Owensboro, into up towards Gibson and Pike counties, Hazleton, those areas. You're under a winter weather advisory for the same time period from midnight Wednesday through 6 p.m. Thursday. And the reason why you're not under the ice storm warning is that we're expecting just not as much ice up there. We're expecting the higher bands of ice to set up over the ice storm warning area. So we're expecting 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of ice, possibly mixed with a little bit of sleet or snow, although we're not expecting much sleet or snow accumulation. And so this is kind of our thinking right now. So we're not expecting, in the advisory area, we're not expecting as much impacts from, say, power outages, but we do expect treacherous road conditions to develop across the area here as well. So that's kind of what the delineating factor is between the winter weather advisory and the ice storm warning, is that impacts of tree damage and possibly some scattered power outages from the higher ice accumulation. So I'm going to advance to the next slide, and this should show what we're expecting in terms of ice accumulation. And so I'll leave this up here for a couple minutes. It's kind of I tried to put as many towns on here as I could. Basically, areas in the red is in the forecast is where we're expecting at least 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation. That's our threshold for an ice storm warning. And then it's trending further down as you go further north towards Mount Vernon and Evansville. But we're still expecting upwards of 1/10 of an inch of accumulation, which could definitely cause lots of difficult driving conditions and icy roads. But in terms of icing, the bullseye area that we're particularly concerned about kind of stretches from New Madrid County in southeast Missouri over across the Mississippi River into far western Kentucky, Fulton, Clinton, Mayfield, Murray, Benton, Cadiz, Princeton, over towards Madisonville, Central City, Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, Elkton. And the trend, if you joined me yesterday, I discussed that the trend within the miles had been for this heavier band to shift further south, and that's what we've seen yesterday. This higher accumulation was kind of right across the Ohio River through southern Illinois towards Henderson and Owensboro. But now that has shifted further south, and now the bullseye area is looking closer to the areas along the Arkansas and Tennessee borders. So that's the area that we're really focusing on in this corridor from New Madrid County over to Mayfield and Murray, through Cadiz, Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, up to Madisonville, and then Central City areas of western Kentucky for the highest ice accumulations, where we could see those scattered power outages and tree damage. Now, I want to stress that these values are still, you can multiply these values by five times, and it would still be less than the ice that we got in 2009. So it is you might get some, if you look at this map, you might see some recollections of, oh no, the way the ice is oriented, but the amounts are much, much less. So we're not expecting anything like a devastating ice storm, but we could see some scattered power outages and tree damage, and we're definitely expecting treacherous road conditions everywhere. So I can come back to this map if people have questions about it, but this is our latest forecast right now. This could definitely shift a little bit more. The trend has definitely been further to the south, but if that might be a good thing, and if it shifts a little bit further south, if you up in Mount Vernon or Evansville over to Owensboro, you might get a little bit less of this freezing rain, but it could be bad if you're especially if you're watching from Murray or Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, over back to New Madrid and down into the Missouri Boot Heel and northwest Tennessee. So that's the latest thinking right now. And then I'm going to go next and talk a little bit about the timing. So this is going to be kind of a long duration event. The warning goes from midnight tonight all the way to 6 p.m. on Thursday, which is well over a day. And so it's not going to be a steady non-stop rain. We're kind of expecting it to come in waves. And the first wave we're expecting will arrive later tonight as maybe some freezing drizzle. If you're down here in southeast Missouri, Poplar Bluff, over to New Madrid, and then in the Purchase area of western Kentucky, you could see some freezing drizzle as early as about light freezing drizzle. This shouldn't cause much in the way of travel impacts as early as like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight, but we're expecting the more significant freezing rain to spread north as we get closer to midnight when the actual winter storm or ice storm warning begins. And then we have it reaching Cape Girardeau and Paducah as we get towards that midnight, early morning hours past midnight, and spreading north and east from there. And then finally getting up towards Mount Vernon, Evansville, and Owensboro as we get closer to daybreak on Wednesday morning. And I want to stress that if you're in Hopkinsville, the temperatures are going to be above freezing here initially, so it's going to start most likely as a period of rain overnight and probably well into Wednesday morning before the temperatures cool below freezing. So in your area, and especially Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, the bulk of the freezing rain is actually probably going to fall during the overnight hours Wednesday into Thursday, which kind of explains why we have such a long time. Not everyone's going to see the rain the freezing rain and the accumulation is going to happen at different rates and at different times depending on where you are, and it could be pretty spread out over the area. So there will definitely be lulls in the precipitation. Right now it looks like there could be a bit of a lull Wednesday afternoon before another wave moves in Wednesday night into Thursday. So I tried to put together a map that kind of put for some of the bigger cities in our area where we could see time to time the periods of transition between maybe some freezing rain and snow. So if you're watching here in Paducah, we're kind of expecting just off and on periods of light to moderate freezing rain. And that doesn't sound really scary, but when you're talking about freezing rain, accumulations on power lines and things like that, usually light freezing rain accumulates better than heavy freezing rain, because if it's light, it'll stick to things like tree branches and power lines more easily. And if not, if it's coming down really heavily, it might just wash off and then not cause too much of an issue. So in Paducah, we're expecting those periods of light to moderate freezing rain, and probably most likely we'll have a kind of a wave of freezing rain early tonight, and then maybe some breaks tomorrow afternoon, and then another wave in the evening hours going overnight into Thursday morning before we end as we get towards the noon hour on Tuesday. In Cape Girardeau, it's kind of the same situation. Maybe more breaks in the freezing rain, and the freezing rain will be lighter, so there won't be as much accumulation, but there still will be travel impacts. So definitely expecting kind of a similar situation with these kind of periods of the light freezing rain accumulating on the roads and causing travel issues. And then for Evansville, we're expecting it to start as light freezing rain as we get towards early Wednesday morning near the near daybreak, and then expecting off and on periods of that light freezing rain. And then as we get into Thursday overnight, it might be cold enough to transition to periods of light sleet or snow, which would cause travel issues, but at least you wouldn't have accumulations on the power lines. It's just going to be a few degrees colder. That will allow the freezing rain to transition to more light sleet or light snow. And kind of a similar situation in Carbondale, starting as a periods of light freezing rain to late tonight, early Wednesday morning, and then transitioning as we go into Wednesday night into some periods of light snow or sleet. But still, that will be a again, temperatures are well below freezing. It won't take much to cause issues with travel. So definitely, it won't be coming down like cats and dogs, but it will definitely cause impacts when you try to travel. In the Hopkinsville area, I mentioned this earlier, but you're actually going to be warned if to start as a period of rain showers, especially going through tonight, and then actually through much of the morning hours on Wednesday and early afternoon. And it won't really be until the afternoon, maybe late afternoon Wednesday, before we transition to freezing rain. But when it does transition, we're expecting it to come down it's going to accumulate very quickly, especially Thursday night. The miles that we've been looking at today have really been hitting the Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell areas for some very quick, significant accumulations of freezing rain Wednesday night into Thursday. So if you're watching in Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, and you see it's raining tomorrow, don't be surprised if it's raining at first. But then we're going to expect the colder air and that transition to happen to freezing rain, and it could come down accumulate on the power lines and trees very quickly Wednesday night into Thursday morning before ending late Thursday afternoon. And then Owensboro, similar to Evansville, periods of light freezing rain beginning in the pre-dawn hours, 6 a.m. Wednesday morning or so, give or take a few hours. And then we'll see those accumulation and travel impacts during the day, often on periods of freezing rain. And then as we get into the evening hours, Wednesday into Thursday, it might be cold enough to transition into more of periods of light sleet or snow, which could cause, again, travel issues, but not expecting much in the way of power outages and tree damage like we are further to the south. And then up towards Mount Vernon, you might be the area where you see generally light periods of freezing rain mixed with snow and sleet through the whole period, since you're going to be furthest to the north, and the temperatures here will be colder. That won't preclude any travel impacts, but it might be a few degrees either way, but there's definitely potential there for this to be a little bit more sleet and snow up there and less freezing rain, which could still cause slippery road conditions, but maybe lighter on the freezing rain side. But that's kind of a general overview of some of the bigger cities in our area. I wish I could do them all, but I hopefully if you live in between those areas, you can kind of extrapolate to kind of see what we're thinking in terms of impacts for your town. And you can always go to our website at weather.gov/PAH, and you can type in the name of your town, and you can get an hour-by-hour forecast on our website. So I mentioned this before. This is not 2009. Similar setup, but the amounts of ice are much, much lower. So we're not expecting any sort of the devastation that we saw in 2009, but some of you could lose power for a time, and there could be some tree damage, especially in that area I was talking about from the Missouri Boot Heel, especially parts of western Kentucky near the Tennessee border from Mayfield, Murray, over to Fort Campbell, and Hopkinsville up to Madisonville. That's the area that we're targeting for the highest amounts of freezing rain at this time. I talked about this yesterday, but just want to hit it again. If you do got to travel, make sure you keep your gas tank full. Make sure your tires are in good condition. Make sure your windshield wipers actually work. And then always make sure you carry a kit in case you get stranded, especially since it's going to be quite cold at times during this winter storm. And if you do lose power, just make sure you have to use things like a wood stove or a fireplace or like a generator, portable heater, space heater. Make sure you use common sense. Make sure those are properly ventilated. Make sure they have auto shutoffs and that sort of thing. Make sure you have carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors. I will point out that the leading cause of death from the 2009 ice storm was carbon monoxide poisoning from people using their generators incorrectly. So make sure you keep that in mind if you do lose power, because these can definitely keep you warm and keep you safe when there's when there's a power outage. But make sure you use them correctly and make sure nothing unintentionally tragic happens. So, and then to add insult to injury, I thought I'd talk about this a little bit. Going into this weekend, Wednesday shouldn't be too bad. We'll generally be in the upper 20s to lower 30s. Maybe get a little bit of sun to melt a little bit of the ice that does accumulate on the trees and power lines. But it looks like we have an Arctic wave coming in, especially as we go for Valentine's Day on Sunday and into President's Day on Monday. So here we have low temperatures on Sunday, possibly getting down below zero up around Mount Vernon, single digits pretty much across the entire area. And then with the steady wind coming in, we got wind chill values very, very cold. Sub-zero everywhere, as low as 10 to 15 degrees below zero from Poplar Bluff, Cape Girardeau, up to Marion, Illinois, Mount Vernon, over to Evansville. And then for President's Day on Monday, maybe even a couple degrees colder, getting down near zero from Evansville, Marion, Cape Girardeau. It's been a few years, 2 to 3 years for a lot of areas since we've had this kind of cold. So just be ready, especially if we do still have lingering power outages. I'm hopeful that any power outages will be restored long before this, but just something to keep in mind. It's going to be quite cold, especially getting into Sunday into Monday. So that is pretty much all I have. I can go through and try to answer any questions that you might have. Someone asked for the name of the briefer. My name is Derek Snyder. I'm a meteorologist here at the National Weather Service office in Paducah. I heard some people talking about, I see some discussion about some of the different models. One model that we look at is called the NAM model. We're showing quite a bit of ice accumulation. I will caution you a little bit that when you're talking about ice accumulation with weather forecast models, and you can look at these models online, they're all free of charge, and there's lots of websites where you can look at them. A lot of those models don't take into account how quickly the ice accumulates on trees and power lines. It's just kind of a raw total of how much will fall and hit the ground, but not a depiction of how much might actually accumulate. What we use at the Weather Service, part of the tools that we have, try to anticipate how much might actually accumulate on trees and power lines. And so that's why this forecast that you see here tries to account for the actual accretion on roads and bridges and trees and power lines, which is kind of a little bit of inside baseball about how freezing rain gets put together. Um, Someone asked about wind. Yes, that is a concern. During the event itself, the wind shouldn't be too bad. Maybe some gusts up to 10 miles an hour at times. After the system starts departing the area Thursday afternoon, we could have the winds pick up a little bit and we have some gusts up to maybe as high as 20 miles an hour. So that could cause, it's not going to be a it's not going to be devastating to if there's any ice on the trees, but it's definitely not going to help in that situation. So that's something we're definitely keep a close eye on. It's something to be aware of. Someone's asking about travel impacts. I-55 south of Cape Girardeau. That's going to be one of the more difficult areas to travel on, especially as we get into tonight. There could be freezing drizzle as early as this evening, and then deteriorating as we go, especially into Wednesday night into Thursday. So and it's looking like the Missouri boot heel into northwest Tennessee. That's kind of looking like one of those bullseye areas I discussed a few minutes ago where the highest totals can be expected. So people are asking if the band of heavier ice could shift north. The trend has been for the ice accumulations to trend further to the south with time. Yesterday, if you saw this map, the band of red, or the heaviest accumulation was further north along the Ohio River up towards Evansville and Owensboro. And so that's definitely shifted, a good 50 to 75 miles to the southeast. There still could be a little bit more wiggle room for this to move a little bit further to the southeast. I'm not really expecting it to move back to the north. The trend has definitely been in one direction over the last few days. So, someone asked about Owensboro and a warning. As you can see on the map here, Owensboro, we have about a little over 1/10 of an inch of accumulation. Now, Davis County could have some isolated areas up to 2/10 of an inch, but since our threshold's 1/4 of an inch of ice, that's why Owensboro is under advisory. If by some chance the heavier band does start to shift north, we could, that obviously things could change with a winter weather advisory versus an ice storm warning. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think right now, given the lower ice totals and the potential for some sleet and snow to mix in at times, that would be that would cut down on the freezing rain accumulations, which is why you're under a winter weather advisory. So someone's asking about Greenville, Kentucky. That's kind of out here in this area around the line between around 1/4 of an inch. So ice, that's right on our ice storm warning thresholds. So Greenville could definitely see some of the higher end accumulations over 1/4 of an inch that could cause those tree and power line damage threats that we're talking about. Any accumulations of snow and sleet. There could be a little bit of snow and sleet accumulation, especially up here around Mount Vernon along I-64 if things trend a little bit colder. But right now we have the snow and sleet accumulations kind of as an inch or less everywhere. But there could be a little bit of a dusting of snow or sleet, especially along Interstate 64. And if this trends a little bit further to the south and east, there could be a little bit more snow, maybe up to an inch at times. But we're not expecting snow and sleet to be a significant contributor to have significant accumulations. Stoddard County, Bernie, Missouri. There's going to be kind of a sharp cutoff. I think there's going to be an area where, especially probably somewhere in here, where there's going to be some pretty impressive ice accumulation totals. And then because there's going to be several rounds of precipitation that move through this area, and as you go further north into the west, it's going to we're not going to get as many rounds of that precipitation up here, which will cut down on the amount of freezing rain accumulations. So that's kind of what our thinking is right now. And then and Stoddard County is kind of right on that threshold. Maybe one part of the county might, if you're down in the southern part of the county near New Madrid, you might get well over 1/4 an inch of ice. And then further to, if you're up near towards the Bollinger County line over towards Wayne County, you might only see closer to 1/10 of an inch of ice. So it's definitely that zone. But, a little shift north or south can make a big difference. Some questions. I see Hancock County, Lewisport, Ohio County. Ohio County is under the ice storm warning, where we're expecting around or a little bit over a quarter-inch of ice. Ohio County, Hancock County is under the winter weather advisory, where the icing totals are a little bit less. Someone asking about Henderson, Evansville. You are under the winter weather advisory, so the higher ice totals will be to your south right now, but we're still expecting around 1/10 of an inch of ice and maybe a little bit of snow and sleet mixed in. So definitely some difficult travel conditions expected. Someone's asking chances of this shifting more to the south. Can't rule it out. The trend has been more towards the southern trend. It seems like it's sort of stabilized today, with the highest totals kind of centered along the Missouri Boot Heel, Northwest Tennessee, and along the Tennessee Kentucky border. And if you're heading further towards Louisville, it kind of continues in sort of like east-northeast trajectory over as you're getting closer to central Kentucky and eastern Kentucky as well. I'll put a comment in here. Someone's asking about our website, where you can go click Find Your Town. And I'll just do that right now. It's weather.gov/PAH. And if you go there, you'll have a menu where you can type in your city or your zip code. Someone's asking about some of the models that we use. We use a lot of our models now. Not to get too inside baseball, we have high resolution models that run in they'll update every hour, and very fine scale forecasts will go ahead every hour out to maybe 18 hours or 24 hours, for example. And then you have more coarse scale models that run maybe every 6 hours or every 12 hours, and those will go out maybe out to 10 days. And what we use with the Weather Service, and we definitely know about some of the biases that the models have. We try to correct for those, and usually our forecasts are a bit of a blend. And what we use for the forecast is that we call it the national blend of models. It kind of that blend takes and sees which models have been performing the best. It weights each of those models according to how well they're doing, and a whole bunch of other factors, and then it kind of gives us sort of a smoothie or something like that, a model smoothie of what it thinks is the most probable outcome. And then the nice thing about that is it kind of gives you different probabilities of reaching certain thresholds. So someone asked about the Muhlenberg County, Livingston County, Hopkins County. So you're all kind of in the same line around this corridor where we could see about 1/4 of an inch of ice, and that's our threshold for an ice storm warning, where we have the potential for over 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, and that could definitely cause scattered power outages, especially with a little bit of wind coming in Thursday, gusts up to 20 miles an hour. So all those areas, we could definitely see the tree damage and the scattered power outages, in addition to the difficult road conditions. Someone mentioned 2009. Thankfully, we're not expecting anything like 2009 here, but there definitely could be some power outages, hopefully short-lived. Just fingers crossed that we can all get through this without anyone losing power. So that would be good. Someone mentioned the European or American models. When I mentioned the national blend of models, those are included in that blend that we use. We also collaborate with our neighboring forecast offices, and then we also have what the Weather Service calls national centers. There's an office called the Weather Prediction Center. They do forecasting for the entire country, and they provide us a lot of input with the potential for freezing rain. And we talked with them. We've been holding conference calls with them and our neighboring offices over the last few days. So some other questions: Davis County, Owensboro, and then Murray. So I'll start with Murray. Murray, you're kind of in the bullseye here. Unfortunately, we have up to almost 1/3 of an inch of ice forecast in the Murray area. That could definitely be a big problem in terms of scattered power outages and tree damage. So definitely need to be aware of that. And then up towards someone asked about Owensboro. Owensboro, you're under the winter weather advisory for around a tenth to 2/10 of ice accumulation, maybe a little bit of snow and sleet mixing in. So we're not expecting the power outage problems that we are further south, but definitely some issues with dangerous driving conditions. So some people asking about timing again. So I will fast forward on here. Here's kind of where we're start looking at the first round of timing. First wave of freezing rain. This is looking to arrive in southeast Missouri and far western Kentucky later this evening around 9 o'clock. Although there could be some freezing rain down towards the Missouri boot heel as early tonight, maybe at 6 or 7 o'clock, spreading further to the north if you're traveling that way. But we're expecting a more significant freezing rain to arrive around 9 p.m. and spreading north to midnight there, and then further to the north and east, Carbondale to Paducah, Hopkinsville, Madisonville. It'll be a little bit later during the middle of the night, and then as we get closer to Owensboro and Evansville and Mount Vernon, it'll be more towards the early morning pre-dawn hours, and then right around sunrise in those areas. So someone asked, will there be thawing and a freeze in the evening? That kind of depends on where you're located. If you're in the Hopkinsville area, this will definitely be warm enough to start off as rain before transitioning to freezing rain as we get into especially the afternoon hours on Wednesday. But further to the north, like if you're north of the Ohio River, it'll probably likely be below freezing during this entire event. So, well, I hate to say it, but I'm sort of losing my voice, so I should probably wrap it up. This video will be available to replay on our Facebook page. I'm going to upload it to our YouTube page as well, and then we'll tweet out a link on our Twitter account. We'll be providing updates through this event. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thank you for the great questions. I hope I was able to answer as many as I could. So you all stay safe, and hopefully we'll get through this in the next few days, and before you know it, it'll be springtime, and maybe I'll be talking to you about thunderstorms. So you all have a good night.